All right, let's hop into the first behavioral video around the question on tell me about yourself. So this question can be phrased in two different ways, right? It could be phrased as a tell me about yourself, or it can be phrased as walk me through your resume. And the reason why I make this distinction is that you don't want a rehearsed answer that answers tell me about yourself and it doesn't answer walk me through your resume properly, right? So if someone says walk me through your resume and you start and talk for 30 seconds about like your personal self, well, that's going to be really, really weird and really awkward, right? Similarly, if someone says, tell me about yourself, and you say, absolutely nothing about you and you just hop straight into your resume, that will still be weird, maybe not as much as the first example, but you want to kind of throw in at least like one little like tidbit, right? So you want to make sure that this is, I mean, just like pretty much purely what is it like professional. They don't really want to hear about like your personal life. At least that's been my experience. Again, that varies from banker to banker, but I mean this is what I would personally advise you guys to do. So I would actually say that you start off with I grew up in blank, like whichever place that you grew up in, and then you could say eh, and I studied, or like where I studied, right? Like where I studied whatever at like the University of like whatever, right? So I grew up in um, North Carolina where I studied engineering at the University of North Carolina. Right, so I grew up in North Carolina where I studied engineering at the University of North Carolina. Right, I guess that's the example that we're going with, right? And then you're going to say, "Oh, I really enjoyed it." Right, so I started my career. This supposed to be my career in the blank space, right? So, oh, I really enjoyed it. So I started out my career in the um, petroleum engineering space, right? Or maybe in like the oil and gas space, or the oil and gas like industry, whatever you want to say, right? I really enjoyed it, so I started out my career in the oil and gas space um, at, and then insert like the oil and gas place that you that you started at, or whichever industry that you're kind of choosing here, right? So let's say that I started at SLB, right? Um, and then you're going to, I guess, like say that at like insert place, right? It's like I worked on whatever you worked on, right? And the main thing for this is make sure that it is something that is like try your best to bend it so that it sounds like it's like more applicable for investment banking, right? Now you don't want a long spiel here. You want one sentence, maybe two, right? Um, So, I mean, in this example, maybe I should have thought this example through a little bit more, but um, okay, so I started out my career in the oil and gas space at SLB. At SLB, I'll write that out here. At SLB, I worked on research reports analyzing like the financials of oil companies. I don't know, or research reports. something around like oil and gas, right? However you want to kind of like phrase it, right? But you want to have something that maybe sounds a bit more quantitative. Maybe you're leaning into the fact that you kind of have industry in the oil and gas space, so you're recruiting in the oil and gas space, right? So something like that, hopefully, right? So at SLB, I worked on X, Y, and Z, whatever it was. Um, and you could kind of like end it there, right? And then you're going to say, from there, I took a promotion um, to join, let's say Chevron, right? Or insert whatever uh, company here. So from there, I took a promotion to join Chevron, where I worked uh, on whatever, right? And hopefully you want this one to be like somehow closer to what an investment banker does than this one, right? So you can kind of paint this narrative that like, oh, you went from like, even if this is just like pure oil and gas work, right? And now you're kind of working like something a little bit closer to like what like an investment banker might do, right? It doesn't like think of like anything quantitative, think about like researching anything, any client interactions, like stuff like that, right? Or preparing presentations, stuff like that, right? Anything that needs like a high level of like detail orientation, that could be like something else, right? So from there, I took a promotion to join Chevron, where I worked on blah 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 blah, right? And then you're going to say, um, I really enjoyed it. If you don't want to repeat this, I mean, find some other word for it, right? But I really enjoyed it, and it helped me build my um, and then here you can kind of insert the skills that it helped you build, right? So it helped you build, let's say, 3 skills, right? Maybe 2 skills. Three isn't better than two. Two is completely fine, right? You just want to make sure that these are relevant and they're actually like kind of tied in with what you were doing and what you might be doing in banking, right? So something that kind of comes to mind is like your if you had like some finance background, right? It helped build my financial analysis skills, right? Or it helped if you don't have no background. Oh, it helped build out my detail orientation. Oh, it helped build out my client relationship management skills. So something around that front, right? So these I'm marking them as blue because they're like more of like a bigger insert, right? They're not just like you're plugging in the place in the company, right? Oop, there we go. Right? They help build out my blah 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 skills, but I wanted I've wanted to work on something more blank, blank, and blank. So I started my MBA to facilitate my transition into investment banking, right? So What you're putting in these three is your reasons for why you want to go into investment banking, right? Well, maybe you want to go into investment banking because you want to work on something more analytical, right? Maybe you want to work on something more dynamic. Maybe you want to work on something that's a bit more detail oriented, right? Or maybe you want to work on something that's more fast paced, right? So whatever the case is, you're going to put like one word answers in here, right? So let's review really quickly. Right? So they're going to ask you, oh, tell me about yourself. You'll be like, yeah, sure. So I grew up in North Carolina where I studied engineering at the University of North Carolina. I really enjoyed it. So I started out my career in the oil and gas space at SOB. At SOB, I worked on blah, 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 something kind of close, highlighting maybe some skill that's a little bit of an overlap, but don't say it explicitly, right? Be like, oh, I worked on just say it as at SOB, I worked on like different research reports analyzing XYZ information, right? Don't try to pull this into investment banking at this point in time. Uh, it comes off as like awkward at that point, at least in my opinion, right? From there, I took a promotion to join Chevron, where I worked on um, yes, some more things, right? Maybe bring this a little bit closer to what investment bankers do, right? And you can kind of hint at it a little bit more, right? You basically want them to uh, what they're doing right now is they're building a mental model of who you are, right? So they're going to hear this whole thing and they're going to be like, oh, okay, so he worked on like quantitative stuff. Oh, okay, he worked on this thing or she worked on this thing, right? So they're trying to find like some parallels, right? And they're trying to kind of put you in a box so that they can kind of make a better like they can have a better image of who you are as a person, right? So from there, I took a promotion to Chevron where I worked on XYZ. I really enjoyed it and it helped build and now here is where we're kind of saying explicitly what skills did it help you build, right? So if you worked on like research reports or whatever, right, it helped build out my like analytical skills or help build out like my like researching skills, whatever. I wouldn't say researching skills, right? But or you prepared presentations, right? It helped build out my detail orientation skills, or you managed client relationships, right? Then oh, it helped build out like my client relationship management skills, right? That's one that isn't like as important, right? But you want to say things that like are a huge part of what an investment banking associate does in his full-time role, right? So you say it really helped me build my XYZ skills, but I wanted to work on something that's more, and then you're going to insert like the specific things around investment banking. So I wanted to work on something more dynamic, analytical, and fast-paced, right? So I started my MBA to facilitate my transition into investment banking. That's it, right? So I see a lot of people over engineering this so that it sounds awkward. Like they'll start off the conversation or start off the coffee chat having like a normal conversation with this person. Oh, you're talking about like, oh, it's so cold over here. Oh, it's like burning hot. Like I have no idea what's going on, right? And then they're going to be like, okay, yeah, so tell me a little bit about yourself. Let's hop into it, right? And then they go into like this monotonous like thing, right? So like if they say that, oh, it's like super cold where you are, right? And then they're like, and you're having some like conversation about it, and then they say, okay, well, go ahead, tell me a little bit about yourself. Where you're gonna be like, oh, I grew up in Texas, so I'm definitely not used to this cold, right? And in Texas, I studied whatever, 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 right? Yeah, I mean, that's like an example that came off the top of my head, right? But you don't want to make it seem like too robotic, right? So then that's like one main thing. And then another thing that I feel like people do is they try to like force the issue way too much in their tell me about yourself. They try to force why they would be a good banker super, super hard in the tell me about yourself. At this point, like as long as what's way more important than making it seem like you're going to be a great banker based on your prior skill set is do you are you not like an awkward person? Are you like a normal human being that can like hold like a conversation, right? Um, and that's way more important. There are people that have backgrounds that are completely unrelated with investment banking, and they went to an MBA program to pivot into investment banking, and they do so successfully, right? That's the point of an MBA program, right? So you don't need to force the issue about why you're like an amazing investment banking candidate based on your background, right? Your background is actually a pretty small piece into actually getting the investment banking offer. What's more important is, well, you're now at a great MBA program, so they're looking at that far more heavily, right? So the biggest piece of advice that I would have is kind of follow a structure like this. Make sure it's conversational. Make sure it's not super awkward, and make sure that you can kind of pivot on your feet, right? So if they stop you halfway through and they were like, "Oh, tell me more about that," right? Well, don't get completely thrown off, right? So that's how I would handle the question on tell me about yourself or walk me through your resume. So hopefully that's been helpful.